I heard my sister-in-law chuckle. I purchased my ideal home with your education funds. Bid farewell to becoming a doctor. She was unaware that I had already sent the $600,000. I revealed her worst secret when her buy failed. Reddit, hello. I had a little fortune and a dream that had sustained me through all the sadness and loneliness when my parents died when I was just 16. They had dedicated their whole lives to provide me with the possibility to go medical school, something they were never given. Nearly $600,000 of the money they left behind was carefully saved in a college fund that my uncle oversaw until I reached 18. I had always been the type of responsible child who studied late into the night, volunteered at the neighborhood clinic, and understood that my parents' legacy was more than simply financial gain. It was a purpose. I wanted to be a doctor because I wanted to help people, not because I wanted to be a famous doctor. How my parents couldn't be healed by anybody. For me, that money was everything. In that account, every dollar was more than simply cash. My future lay in it. As promised, my uncle gave me complete ownership of the money when I reached 18. To avoid any fraud or error, I established a trust and secured it more tightly than Fort Knox, granting access only with dual permission. My sister-in-law, but anytime money was mentioned, Melissa's eyes always had a particular shine in them. I knew she was trouble from the start when she married my elder brother, Daniel, 5 years ago. Although she hailed from a wealthy background, her family had gone bankrupt when she was a teenager. She then seemed to feel that the world owed her restitution for all of the discomforts she had experienced. Melissa was the kind of girl who boasted about being born for luxury, wore brands like Armor, and set up her Instagram account like a Hollywood public relations manager. I put up with her since she was related to me. But I knew in my heart that she detested me. When I was admitted into a pre-med program, she once advised me that I should marry a rich person instead of becoming a doctor since it was a poor person's dream of getting wealthy. I refrained from biting. I kept my head down and concentrated on my academics and future, ignoring her remarks and attitude. I was unaware, however, that Melissa had been surreptitiously observing me in anticipation of a chance. She also discovered one. Daniel informed Melissa that I had full access to my college money around 3 months ago. Daniel allegedly remarked in passing that I had made a little transfer to pay some college costs. Melissa just needed that. She began to probe, asking informal inquiries. Where was the money that I kept? Who was in charge of the account? When individuals were earning 6 figures on TikTok, did I truly believe that going to medical school was worth the investment? Naturally, I didn't tell her anything. She was skilled at manipulation, however. She increased her charm around me over the course of the next several weeks by feigning concern and support. Although I wasn't duped, I also didn't anticipate the ambush. Then the phone rang. The morning was a Sunday. My phone rang as I was drinking coffee and going over my biochemistry test flashcards. Melissa was the one. There was almost a dance of joy in her voice. She said, "I hope you're not too upset. However, I recently made a home offer. My ideal house. And you know what? Your college fund was used by me. I understand that you are likely astonished, but in all honesty, it's for the best. In any case, you're not a good fit for medical school. This is a sight you ought to have seen. 5 bedrooms, a walk-in closet larger than your apartment, and marble countertops. Later, you'll thank me." For a few minutes, I froze. I was unable to understand her words at all. My college budget. How? I checked my banking app again. Breathing shallowly, heart racing. The account was left unaltered. There was still the $600,000. It dawned on me then. Melissa attempted to take money, but she was unaware that I had transferred the whole sum into a different trust a few days before, where it was unavailable and required biometric permission. The choice had been made at random. My university was the scene of a phishing scam, which made me apprehensive. I thus transferred the funds to an investment bank account that resembled a more safe vault. Melissa must have attempted and failed to transfer the money. However, rather of checking, she gloated too soon. On the phone, I pretended to be stupid. I questioned her about specifics. She claimed to have already signed the paperwork and used what she believed to be my education funds to pay the deposit. He acknowledged that he had believed her, which was the hardest part. She first informed him that the money belonged to her and that my parents had given it to us as a joint family fund. He didn't ask any questions. He never believed she would lie, he never examined the will, and that guilt was killing him. For their children's sake, not for hers, he begged me not to ruin her. My nephew and niece were just 5 and 7 years old, too young to comprehend what was taking on, too little to be harmed by their mother's avarice. He pleaded with me to look for another route. Civil charges, maybe, perhaps a settlement of some kind. Anything except jail time. I promised to give it some thought. However, I knew in my heart what I was going to do. Money wasn't the only factor here. Melissa had attempted to destroy me. She had laughed as she attempted to take my future and made fun of my aspirations. She wouldn't have thought twice about destroying me if the positions had been reversed. She needed to be stopped more than anything else because, if she got away with it, she would just go on to her next victim, sure that she could charm and maneuver her way out of any situation. I didn't want to wreck the children's life, however. Since they were innocent, I took an unusual action. Melissa and I had an in-person meeting. She didn't resemble the person I used to know. Her flawless makeup had vanished, leaving behind a pale, nervous face. As we sat across from one another in a quiet corner of a public cafe, her hands shook slightly, her hair was wrapped up in an untidy bun, and there were heavy bags under her eyes. In case she pulled anything, I wanted witnesses. She made an attempt to speak first, but I replied I would speak instead and put up a hand. I made it very clear. I had the video of the covert run, the fake emails, the falsified paperwork, and the fraudulent efforts to take my education funds. I informed her that while I hadn't yet pressed the gas pedal, I had already filed a complaint and informed the DA. I then presented her with an option. My first option is to go public. I investigate every charge to the fullest degree permitted by law. That meant losing custody of her children, going to prison, and getting a criminal record. Every facade she had maintained and everything she had constructed would fall apart. Her background would be permanently revealed, her name would be in the press, and her face would be shown. Option 2 is that she gives Daniel exclusive custody of the children, files for divorce right away, and discreetly departs with a sealed agreement that she will never speak to my family or me again. Unless another victim came forward on their own, I would drop the hit-and-run tip in exchange. She would have to pay Daniel back every penny of the money she took out of their joint accounts in pursuit of her dream home, but I wouldn't file criminal fraud charges for the education fund. Moreover, should she ever transgress again, she would also submit a letter of confession for my archives. For a whole minute, she gazed at me in a state of shock. Then, as she agreed, she let out a few silent, bitter tears that flowed down her cheeks instead of loud, theatrical screams. She was aware of her situation. She had misjudged me. She believed me to be a cowardly, bashful, and spineless medical student. She was unaware of my transformation. The divorce was filed in 2 weeks. Daniel was granted full custody. Everything was autographed by Melissa. She returned to her parents' little apartment 2 states away when the home purchase completely fell through. Her reputation was in ruins. She was never seen by me again. She was never heard from. She seemed to vanish. For months, Daniel apologized every day. I pardoned him. Yes, he had eventually been blinded, but he wasn't malevolent. He was another victim of Melissa, and he showed his devotion to me by supporting me through the whole ordeal. For my part, I retained every cent of my college money. I received honors admission to medical school after graduating from pre-med, and I am now halfway through my residency. I'm living the dream my parents gave me. And each time I enter a hospital ward, I am reminded of how nearly I lost everything because to the avarice of one lady. She lost more, however. She wrecked herself, not because I ruined her. And I ensured that she was never given the opportunity to do it. She probably falsified paperwork, maybe even tricked Daniel into granting her access, and attempted to send the money straight to the vendor, but the transaction failed. There was a chaos now. Without saying anything, I hung up the phone so she could continue living in her fantasy as I went to work. I delved deeply and found everything. In addition to attempting to fake my signature, Melissa had also used my identity to construct a phony email account and pose as me. She had even tried to approve the transfer by contacting my bank under my guise. But she was careless. It could all be traced. I carefully and silently gathered the evidence. I contacted a lawyer, gave them all the information, and we started working on a response. That wasn't all, however. Melissa had a major secret, you see. Melissa had been in a hit-and-run accident years before to her marriage to my brother. She confided in Tara, her former closest friend, but she was never prosecuted since the case never came to light. Years later, they had a falling out, and I recalled Tara implying at one point that Melissa wasn't who we all believed her to be. I pretended that I needed to know the facts for legal reasons when I contacted Tara. As it turned out, Melissa boasted that she got away with sending Tara dashcam video by mistake, but Tara still had it. The video was now in my hands. Melissa attempted to defraud me of money, but she also had a criminal history that might destroy her life. I didn't do anything right away, however. I wanted her to understand her mistake. I wanted the walls to close in on her. Melissa gave me another call 2 days later. She was desperate this time. The sale of the home had failed. The transaction was frozen by the bank. Since the deposit hadn't cleared, the seller was threatening to take legal action. Daniel was enraged. She had apparently assured him that the funds were a bequest from my parents' estate. And now he was asking for clarification. Melissa pleaded with me to release the funds, still holding out hope. I told her at that point. I assured her I was well informed. That I had enough proof to bury her for fraud, identity theft, and other offenses, that the $600,000 was secure, and that her effort to steal from me had been unsuccessful. She attempted to guilt-trip me by bringing Daniel into it, yelled at me, and threatened me. However, I maintained my composure and spoke 7 words that totally silenced her. I am aware of the covert run. The line died. Then everything started to fall apart. The connection died the instant I spoke those 7 words. I know about the hidden run. For a few seconds, I kept my eyes on my phone, half expecting her to contact me right away, but she didn't. I pictured Melissa's expression, the flush fading from her cheeks, the terror taking hold as she realized how much danger she was really in. The failed home transaction was no longer the only thing. This was larger. She was aware that I was holding the shovel and that the history she had so meticulously buried had just been unearthed. Silence for the next few days. Melissa didn't call or text. Daniel, my brother, turned black as well. I was not comforted by the silence. That was the kind that precedes a storm. I wasn't only anticipating reprisals. I was getting ready for it. The procedure of filing charges had already begun by my attorney. We shared the dashcam evidence with the police, turned in the voice and email records she had left behind, and filed an official complaint with the bank's fraud department. Everything was moving now. Melissa didn't deliver the following blow, but I wasn't bluffing either. Daniel was the source. He unexpectedly came up to my flat. He was standing there like a ghost as I opened the door. He had a manila envelope in his hands, dark bags under his eyes, and a look that was somewhere between incredulous and heartbroken. He just strolled in, sat at my kitchen table, and put the envelope in front of me without saying anything at first. Copies of all the fake documents Melissa had used were inside. In order to make it seem like I dropped out and wanted the refund to go straight to her, she created phony permission papers, fake emails, and even a draft of a letter she intended to write to my institution. Daniel had discovered everything. Following the breakdown of the home purchase and the seller's threat of legal action, he had gone through her computer. His marriage, his confidence in her, and his trust were all destroyed by what he found.